Before today's video, we want to bring you a word from AppZone, who is a regular sponsor of this channel. AppZone is an app that suggests games to play, and then you earn money for just trying the games. Then the longer you play, the more you'll earn. AppZone pays out instantly through retailers like Google Play, Xbox, Visa, Steam, Amazon, and more. Every week I seem to find a new game which is a lot of fun to play, and I'm getting paid out in Amazon gift cards. If you download AppZone by clicking on the link below the video, you'll be directly supporting Criminally Listed. So help us keep the lights on and start earning money for yourself for playing games by downloading AppZone today. Without any further delay, here's today's video. Number 3. Colin Hill. Colin Hill lived in Surrey, British Columbia, Canada, with his wife, Becky Jo, and their 2 children, Matthew and Lee. Colin was a respected and well-liked real estate agent. On the night of July 12, 2015, Colin and his family were packing for a trip to Las Vegas. They were supposed to leave the next morning. They also had some house guests who were spending the night. Just before midnight, their doorbell rang. Colin, who was 42, went to answer the door. In the doorway was a young man wearing a mask and a backpack on his chest. Colin tried to slam the door shut, but the young man was too fast and too strong, and he stopped Colin from shutting the door. Colin started to fight with the masked man and yelled out to his family and house guests that a man was trying to get into the house. He urged them to find a safe hiding spot. Colin then shouted that the man had a gun. Then his family and house guests heard a gunshot. Colin had been shot in the chest. Amazingly, Colin was able to push the attacker away from the doorway. He then continued to struggle with the masked man outside. That's when Matthew, Colin's teenage son, came out to help. Shortly after Matthew got outside, both he and Colin ran back towards the house. The masked man fired 4 shots at the father and son as they ran away. One of the bullets hit Colin in the back and he fell to the ground. The masked man then ran off into the night. Colin's wife, Becky, came out of the house and found her husband bleeding to death on their front lawn. She and Matthew used towels to stop the bleeding, but his wounds were too serious. Colin died in his son Matthew's arms. Hours later, 22-year-old Corey Green was arrested while trying to break into another home. He still had the murder weapon in his possession. Green was a high school dropout with a criminal record dating back to 2009 when he was still a teenager. His offenses included dealing drugs and breaking and entering. Green had been released from custody after serving 5 months for possession of stolen property and resisting arrest. He also had a history of violating his parole. At the time of the murder, Green was unemployed and he made his money through criminal activity. On the day of the shooting, Green got into an argument with both his girlfriend and his mistress. He grabbed his gun, a 9mm handgun, which is restricted in Canada, and went to a local strip mall. He stole a car from the strip mall's parking lot, and then he read the insurance papers in the glove compartment and got the car owner's home address. He then went to the address and roamed the neighborhood looking for a home to rob. He picked the Hills home, which was next door to the car owner's home, at random. In November 2016, Green pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. In January 2017, he was sentenced to life without the chance of parole for 17 years. Colin's widow, Becky, said that the punishment wasn't harsh enough. She points out that Colin's death was a senseless murder. She said that Green's actions stole her husband and her father's children away from them, and they'll have to live the rest of their lives without him. Number 2. Miguel Colon. July 12, 2009 was a Sunday, and in the Bronx, New York, It was a hot day. 37-year-old Miguel Colon had the afternoon off from his job as a cell phone salesman. He was a newlywed who got married 3 months earlier. He had a 6-year-old son named Sebastian from a previous relationship. On that afternoon, he picked up Sebastian from Sebastian's mother's house and took him out for a bicycle riding lesson. After the lesson, they started to walk home. The father and son had no idea that about a mile down the road, trouble was brewing. 36-year-old Mark St. Pierre was at a child's birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese with his former girlfriend and their 3-year-old daughter. At around 5:40, St. Pierre tried to take his daughter from the party, but his former girlfriend refused to let him take her. They got into an argument, and St. Pierre assaulted his former girlfriend. He then stormed off and got into his 2008 Infiniti. As he sped out of the parking lot, he hit 2 cars. He then turned onto East Gun Hill Road and took off at a high speed, heading west. People who were on the sidewalk said that the car was moving so fast that they could only tell what color it was. Just before 5:45 p.m., Miguel Colon and his son Sebastian had a green light and they were crossing East Gun Hill Road. Miguel saw the car barreling towards them and he pushed Sebastian out of the way. The car missed Sebastian, but it slammed right into Miguel. Witnesses estimated that the car was traveling at least 80 miles per hour when it hit Miguel. Despite hitting someone, St. Pierre didn't stop driving. He kept speeding, and over the next 5 blocks, he hit 5 cars. He eventually came to a stop 1.37 miles away from Chuck E. Cheese. He had to stop because his car was too damaged to continue. He was arrested at the scene. In total, he hit 7 cars, injured 16 people, and killed Miguel Colon. Because of Miguel's selfless actions, his 6-year-old son was unharmed. St. Pierre pleaded guilty to manslaughter and other charges, and he was sentenced to 10 to 15 years. Number 1. Adel Termos. At 6:13 a.m. local time on October 21, 2015, Metrojet Flight 9268 took off from the airport in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, with the destination of St. Petersburg, Russia. On board were 217 passengers and 7 crew members. 23 minutes later, while they were above the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, the plane lost contact with air traffic control. It had crashed and all 224 people on board were dead. Soon after the crash, the Sinai branch of the Islamic State of Iraq in the Levant, also known as ISIL and formerly known as ISIS, took responsibility for bringing the plane down. It's strongly believed that a suicide bomber on board the plane detonated a bomb that was hidden inside a soda can. 12 days later and 500 miles away, it was a busy evening in the open-air market in Bur el-Barneh, which is a suburb in southern Beirut, Lebanon. People were traveling through the market on their way home from work, while other people were out shopping and enjoying the market's restaurants and cafes. One of those people was 32-year-old Adel Termos, who was at a cafe with his 6-year-old daughter, Malik. The streets were busy and bustling, but overall, it was a peaceful night in the suburb that is mostly populated with Shia Muslims. But then, outside of a Shia mosque in the market, a man detonated his explosive vest. Adel and his daughter were standing about 300 feet from the explosion. As people gathered around the area of the explosion to help survivors and to pray, gunshots broke out. A local man, who was armed with a gun and happened to be in the market, shot at 2 men on a motorcycle. One of the men was hit, and he stopped moving. The other man on the motorcycle was wearing an explosive vest, and he wasn't shot. He ran towards the people who were helping the survivors and praying. Adel, who could have picked up his daughter and ran away, chose to run towards the bomber. He tackled him from behind and held him down. Unable to gain closer to his intended targets, the bomber detonated the vest with Adel on top of him. ISIL immediately took credit for the bombings. The initial bombing killed 43 people. Thanks to Adel's split thinking and selfless actions, the second suicide bomber only killed 3 people. The bomber, Adel, and a third suicide bomber, who happened to be too close when the vest was triggered. By sacrificing himself, Adel saved dozens of people from being killed or injured. This included his 6-year-old daughter, Malik, who was unharmed. Adel Termos was hailed as a hero in his country, but unfortunately his story was lost in the international media because of what happened the day after the bombings in Beirut. Over 3 hours, ISIL terrorists carried out 4 suicide bombings and 4 mass shootings in Paris, France. In total, 130 people and 7 terrorists were killed. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Hopefully you found it interesting. If you did, please subscribe for more videos just like it. Don't forget to go to criminallylisted.com where you can suggest cases, buy merchandise, and you can find out news about an exclusive podcast. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.